Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Daily Football Roundup proudly brings to you its best damn podcast in the world, the 12-ounce Curl Route Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Current. You can find me on Twitter at Aaron Current. My co-host, Kyle, you can find him on Twitter at DF Roundup. And C-Flow, if you want to get in touch with him, just send him a telegram. He'll get it someday. I don't know.
Send me a letter. It's fine.
We just got a letter. What's going on, fellas?
Well, this went from the best damn podcast in the world to the worst podcast when you started talking about we just got a letter like we're on Blue's Clues.
Hey.
No hating. Well, last week we went over the NFC and AFC North, and we ran a little long. Today we're going to go over the NFC and AFC East, and honestly, we'll probably run a little long again. We covered mine and Kyle's division last week, and this week we get to cover our guy Corey's division and talk about some Patriots. But we are going to start in the NFC just because that's the way I set it up, and I'm the producer, so I make the calls, you know.
Save the best division for last. No big deal.
That is a pretty damn good division. So do you guys want to do some introductions, or should we just hop right in, or
Let's just hammer down.
just hammer down? All right, Kyle's got his belt. You know, I mean, you gotta defend that thing. So
Let's pause for a second because the reigning, defending Daily Football Roundup Brad Johnson Fantasy Football Invitational Champion is putting the title on the line again, and we've got Brad Johnson coming back. We're going to be live on August 29th right here on the 12-ounce Curl Route podcast with former Super Bowl winning quarterback Brad Johnson, drafting with you guys live. Drafting live, inviting, I think, 9 people this year into the league. It'll be myself and Brad on a team. Aaron will have his own team, which will probably do pretty terrible. And Corey, who's also won the championship before, you can see with his trophy in the back and that ball signed by Big Bad Brad as well. Hey, we're opening it back up. We're going to have fun with it. So we're looking for 9 people that want to join the league, want to have a little bit of fun. So that's my shameful plug for the draft. So I can defend this belt right here.
Can't wait to take it.
Yeah, hey.
Maybe next year we'll see the belt hanging in this area somewhere.
You think Corey's gonna come do the podcast from your house, Aaron? Or
I'm just gonna have the belts eventually hanging all the way across.
right.
It's gonna look like Hulk Hogan's basement over here. Well, we got a couple people in chat. Let me see if anybody's saying it. No one said anything yet, so I guess we'll just hop right in. I did a little on the go trying to fix her upper from last week because I kept covering our faces, which I realized afterwards was a dumb idea. So
I mean, we ain't pretty or anything. So I mean,
it helps Kyle get some content, you know, and so that helps us out some. So we'll start with the NFC East. Last year's standings go as follows. The Eagles finished 14-3 and went to the Super Bowl. The Cowboys were 12-5. The Giants were 9-7, and the Washington Commanders finished 500, 8-1. And the Cowboys went to the playoffs as well. The Giants just kind of rinse and repeat, and I mean, they're the Giants. But we'll talk about their win totals here for this year. I got these off of DraftKings. So this year's win totals: Philadelphia is at 11.5. Dallas is right behind them at 10.5. And then the Giants are at 7.5, and the Commanders are at 6.5, which apparently they don't like getting coached too hard. And then the coach kind of backs up what he says. That was a really weird situation I planned on talking about today. And then I heard today, Ron Rivera came out and kind of said, I put my foot in my mouth. Like, I don't know. But to me, the NFC East is really a 2-horse race again. I mean, it's Philly and Dallas. And I almost feel sorry for Commanders fans. Giants fans, I like their coach. I'm not a big fan of their quarterback. We'll get into that later on, though. I'm getting sidetracked. So we're going to start from the top to the bottom from last year. First up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. and their draft class goes as follows. Jalen Carter, who they traded up for with the Chicago Bears. Nolan Smith, the edge rusher out of Georgia, because they love them Georgia boys. Tyler Steen, an offensive lineman from Alabama. They followed that up with Kelly Ringo, also from Georgia. You see, Sidney Brown, the safety from Illinois, was penciled in there before Kelly Ringo, actually. And they grabbed Tanner McKee, a quarterback, and Moro Ajomo, a defensive tackle,
It's the favorite part of my show.
to round out their draft. They got some extra D line help, O line, secondary help. I guess. I mean, Kelly Ringo originally was like can't miss first round prospect. Went to Georgia, turning over quarterbacks, doing all the things, and then he just kind of took a big dip in his draft stock. I'm not really sure. He measured well, but I'm not really sure exactly what they may have seen on tape or something that dropped his draft stock. I have no idea. Do any of you have any input on Kelly Ringo in particular?
Not anything that I had seen. Like you said, I mean, he was projected as to be a pretty high pick, and then draft days, because it's not just on one day anymore.
Yeah.
Draft week comes. We'll call it draft week. It'll get to 7 days soon, one round a day, I'm sure. But it just fell. I'm not really sure why, but I'm sure the Eagles got a good corner from him falling. Half that starting defense know each other from their Georgia days.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing with them. I think the same with getting Jalen Carter and Kelly Ringo is you could take these gambles. You had all those extra picks. You like Georgia anyway. It's the Philadelphia Bulldogs at this point. I mean, you're just adding extra pieces to a nice team. That's just all they're doing.
Yeah, as a Bears fan, a lot of Bears fans wanted Jalen Carter really bad. We needed a 3 technique to plug in the middle of our defense. That's all anyone talked about. But when he started having his off the field issues and red flags just started flying up, the Chicago Bears with the new organization trying to rebuild really from scratch, I just don't think they saw it as worth taking the chance on him. And I think he lands at the perfect spot. Because just like you guys said, there's so many Georgia Bulldogs on that defense, former teammates of Jalen's. They know Jalen. They know how to handle him, because I heard one of his red flags was he doesn't like to practice. You got to stay on him. And if he's got all of his guys up there in Philly, I have a feeling he's going to be just fine. And early practice reports I've heard Jalen is that he has been wrecking their offensive line, which
is the best in the league.
Yeah, that's good for the Eagles, man. I mean, I don't know if he would be the exact same if you just grabbed him and plugged him into this Bears defense, because it just doesn't always work.
But
it's not Madden.
I think you have to be really careful about bringing somebody like Jalen Carter in, though. One bad apple, right? So, yeah, it's a luxury pick for the Eagles, but do you want to start bringing in those guys who have those character issues? He had those off the field issues, made some bad decisions with what happened and everything. Can he get past that? Is that something that's going to continue to follow him? Do we have, somebody who's going to be out of the league in 3 years because they can't seem to stay out of trouble? Or do they have a guy who's going to be, an all-pro defensive tackle, multiple Pro Bowls type of player?
Yeah. I think the leadership there is too good that around him that either they'll change him or they'll just let him go. Like, I don't think he's going to be a cancer in the locker room because they just won't let it happen there, I think, in Philly.
Yeah, those are definitely great points. Like I said, I think he landed in the correct spot, the best spot that he could have landed at in the draft. And it was a luxury pick for them, an extra pick. But I saw him at Kroger Field do nothing against our rebuilt offensive line against at UK. And honestly, like before that, I was all in on Jalen Carter. I wanted him to be a Bear. I was all about it. But when I see a defensive tackle that I'm taking in the top 10, I expect him to wreak havoc, on lesser talent. Let's be honest, Corey. You and I are season ticket holders. We know what we were dealing with last year.
Yeah,
and I just didn't see it out of Jalen Carter. But I think he'll be okay in Philly. But we'll get into some more of their key additions this offseason. They traded for DeAndre Swift from the Detroit Lions. They brought in Miles Jack, who I like a lot, former inside linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's just, you talk about it, sideline to sideline speed. That guy's got it. And Terrell Edmonds is the same. I think he was a former linebacker who moved to safety. So, he'll pop you. And they brought in, or they re-signed, I believe, James Bradbury. I think he was already there, and they went ahead and re-upped him for 3 more years, trying to plug some holes on their defense that I'll let you guys talk about the additions, but then we'll get into some of the departures that the Super Bowl team lost last year.
Yeah, so they signed, I think it was yesterday, they signed 2 middle linebackers, and for the life of me, I can't think of the other one that they signed. But they did the same thing last year. I think it was on the same day when they brought Ndamukong Suh in, and they had signed another defensive tackle that day as well. DeAndre Swift, you get another running back in that backfield. You have Swift, you have Kenneth Gainwell, you have Boston Scott, you have Rashad Penny, you have often forgotten Trey Sermon. And the Eagles might keep 4 of those 5. So who's going to be the odd man looking out? Because from what I've been seeing and what I've been hearing is Sermon's actually looking good. He was, I believe, a 3rd-round pick out of the draft and just fell out of favor with the Niners. Who's the odd man out in that backfield?
My big one is DeAndre Swift. Basically, they got rid of Miles Sanders, who he signed with the Panthers, like $8 million or something, and they ended up getting like 2 other people for less than that. DeAndre Swift has a chip on his shoulder. I thought he was going to do great things in Detroit, and they've clearly moved on. So I think he's got a bone to pick this year, and I think he's going to kind of break out as much as he can with Jalen Hurts being a running quarterback.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, where did DeAndre Swift go to college?
They got all their Georgia guys on defense. They wanted to get some on offense too. So, yeah.
They got to even it out.
Here in the middle of the season, they're going to trade for Stetson Bennett, I'm sure, too.
Yeah.
And then their key departures, they had some big names leave. Javon Hargraves got the bag from San Francisco, who apparently they're not working with a salary cap, because I don't know how they continue to pay their D-line and just get an abundance of riches. Andre Dillard, who was a backup offensive tackle for them but would really start anywhere else in the league. He signed with Tennessee. TJ Edwards, linebacker, came back to Chicago, which is where he's from originally. He actually took a nice hometown discount to play for the Bears, which was really cool. And 2 of the bigger names that they lost both their defensive coordinator and their offensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator is going out to Arizona to take over that train wreck. I'm praying for you, Jonathan Gannon. And the offensive coordinator went to Indianapolis, which I think may have had a big thing to do with them drafting Anthony Richardson in that 1st round, because they saw what he was able to do with an athletic quarterback in Philly, and they want to try and regain some of that maybe in their division. But to me, the biggest name is Shane Steichen, to see what he's able to do in Indianapolis, a team that I believe we talked about on here about them really missing their window after Andrew Luck left and trying to rebuild everything. And you got a crazy owner going on Twitter talking all kinds of trash while your running back is just begging for a dime. I mean, it's a bit of a train wreck there in Indy as well, but I'm a big fan of Shane Steichen, and I was a big fan of that hiring. And they did it pretty late. I remember we were all, or at least I was, sitting there watching all these other head coaches getting scooped up, and Indy was sitting there without a head coach, so we didn't know who the quarterback was going to be, and we didn't know a lot about this team, about that team. But that's a big departure for Jalen Hurts, as he just got re-signed.
Well, see, I think that actually, so Brian Johnson's coming in, and he's going to be the new OC. Let's not forget that he was the one that helped Dak Prescott at Mississippi State and Kyle Trask in Florida. So he's got a record of making quarterbacks pretty decent.
But I mean, at the same instance, not only are you're not losing one coordinator, you're losing two, right?
Yeah.
And I think one time I can remember that happening. I think the Seahawks, they lost their offensive and defensive coordinator at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, when they had the Legion of Boom and everything like that. And that's not easy. That's not something that's easy to bounce back from and to continue to carry forward with a whole new person running your offense and a whole new person running your defense as well. So.
Yeah, that's definitely a big question mark on both sides of the ball. Javon Hargrave's a big loss as well. He is getting up there in age, and I mean, we'll have to see if Jalen Carter can fill those shoes. It's a pretty big shoes to fill there in Philadelphia. But I mean, it's hard for me to count them out after what they did last year. They've still got their whole offensive line coming back, their quarterbacks coming back. They plugged in another running back. They've still got A.J. Brown, who really showed Tennessee what they were missing at the wide receiver position as well. I mean, I still think this team's in pretty good shape. And from what Corey was saying, their new OC, he's no slouch, so it'll be interesting to watch. But we'll move on to Dallas, who is always top of the headlines. Jerry Jones loves to talk and hear himself talk, and he definitely he gives every sports show a ton of material for sure. But we'll get into their draft class. Oh, take this one off first. So in their draft class, they drafted Mozzie Smith out of Michigan in the first round. They came back and grabbed Luke Shoemaker, who's also from Michigan, the tight end. They grabbed DeMarvion Overshown, the linebacker out of Texas, who was really speedy in the pre-draft process. I liked him a lot, but I didn't like him at the price they paid for it. Viliami Vihoko Jr., defensive end, out of, I believe, San Diego State or San Jose State. I'm not positive. Asim Richards, an offensive tackle. Eric Scott Jr., a corner. Deuce Vaughn, a running back, who they went a little viral when they drafted him because his dad's on their strength and conditioning or coaching staff or something. And then they rounded it out with Jalen Brooks, a wide receiver. I mean, they needed help stopping the run. That was one of their biggest issues. They brought in Jonathan Hankins late in the season last year to try and help with that. And I think that points to a big reason why they took a swing at a defensive tackle in the first round, who I think he only had half a sack his entire Michigan career. So obviously that's a run stuffing defensive tackle that you're looking for. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
I think Maisie Smith just got activated. I think he was dealing with an injury as well. So I don't think he's gotten a lot of time in camp and everything. The biggest thing that sticks out to me in this draft class is they waited till super late to take a running back. I know I was reading something. I can't for the life of me think of the running back's name that's currently number 2 on the depth chart behind Tony Pollard. But they've got 2 guys behind Pollard who have limited snaps in the NFL, and then they have
Malik Davis, and Ronald Jones.
Ronald Jones has the 2-game suspension. He may not even make the final roster. But there was another guy, and I need to look it up real quick because, like I said, it's a name. He's been with them for a few years, and
the current roster that I'm looking at right now is Tony Pollard, Malik Davis, Ronald Jones, and Deuce Vaughn.
No, there's another guy that just got named as the number 2 running back, and I can.
Fair enough. While you're
Rico Dowdle, Dowdle.
All righty, nice name.
He's got 7 carries for 24 yards in the NFL. He's been in the league since 2020. So he's currently their number 2.
Well, Deuce Vaughn's more of a pass catching back anyway. He's kind of shifty. I really only saw him in, I believe it was the Big 12 championship. I don't watch a ton of Big 12 up here in SEC country, but I tuned in, and he's quick for sure.
I do believe that they'll end up signing Ezekiel Elliott back. And then it'll just be, instead of 1A, 1B with Zeke as 1A, he'll just be 1B now. I think.
I don't disagree with you. I think we're going to see Pollard and Zeke have kind of a combination like DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams had in Detroit last year. DeAndre Swift was more there passing down back, and really they're all at 3 down back until they got into the red zone, and then Jamal Williams would come and punch it in. So I can see that being Zeke this year.
Their schedule, we didn't get to the Philly schedule, but that's fine. We'll get kind of to it in these other teams. Dallas is at New York Giants, home against New York Jets, at Arizona, and then home against my New England Patriots to start.
And really with the NFC East is they play each other very, very tough. I mean, last year, everybody thought, everybody counted Washington and the Giants out, and everybody in that division's finished 500 or higher. When Dallas goes to Washington, it's going to be a close game. When Dallas goes to the Giants, it's going to be a close game. Same thing with the Eagles. When they go there and they've got that home field advantage, it's always close.
As much as I'm not an NFC fan, period, like that division, and I don't like anybody in that division, one, it's stuffed down our faces on Fox, and Thanksgiving. But two, it ends up just being usually good football to watch, even with the Commanders in it. No matter who's playing, like it ends up being, for the most part, competitive, entertaining games.
Yeah, they're definitely. And if you guys want to hop back to Philly and then come back to Dallas and talk about their additions and departures, or
I think we can get back to Philly once we make our projections and stuff if we want to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just run off their schedule when we get there.
Okay. So Dallas's key additions this offseason, they brought in Brandon Cooks with a trade and Stephon Gilmore, the corner from Indianapolis, with a trade. Ronald Jones, as we talked about earlier, even though he has a 2-game suspension. They brought back Dante Fowler Jr., who I liked a lot in the draft. He hasn't done much in the league. He's kind of small, but I do like him. Who's the defensive coordinator in Dallas? Quinn. I really like his.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. My bad. I'm thinking
Dan Quinn's still running the defense out there. I really like his scheme a lot. It'll be interesting to see how he fits Dante Fowler in. And then I put Tony Pollard on there as RB1. I know at one point when Ezekiel Elliott was out with an injury, they kind of were like, Ezekiel who? So this is really Tony Pollard, and he got the franchise tag. So he's on a 1-year deal. He's on a prove-it deal, more or less. And if he doesn't get paid in Dallas, even though running backs aren't getting paid, the top ones are still getting paid. The top 5, are still getting paid. And I think he's out to prove that he is one of those.
I think with Pollard being the way he is, but Brandon Cooks, this is like his 19th team or something, and he still has like 1,100 yards every year and like 6 touchdowns. Yeah. So I do think with CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, if healthy, Dalton Schultz. Yes, Dalton Schultz is on. Who's their tight end now?
Their starter's going to be, I think their starter's going to be Blake Ferguson.
Okay.
And then their backup is Shoemaker, I believe his name is.
That's right, my bad. But just those 3 guys right there. Dak has weapons. I mean, this is the best receiving core I think he's had. So he needs to make it happen.
Yeah. What's funny to me, I wouldn't say funny, but I don't think Brandon Cooks has ever hit free agency. He just gets traded every 3 years, it seems like, or even 2 years. If we run down, he was drafted into the league by the Saints, spent 3 years there, went to New England for a year, was with the Rams for 2 years, 3 years in Houston, and now he's back, or not back, but now he's with the Dallas Cowboys. And like Corey said, it's like 1,100 yards every season. He's got at least 1,000 yards every season except 3. So he's pretty consistent.
So there's a 1,000-yard receiver with Davis Mills slinging him the pill down there.
Pretty much.
And some of their key departures, unless you guys had something else, we'll get into their departures. The top one is Ezekiel Elliott. He's in free agency. Connor McGovern, a guard, went to Buffalo. Dalton Schultz went to Houston, and Noah Brown, who kind of stepped in a little bit there in the season and he was a nice little grab on some weekly fantasy stuff here and there.
He was pretty good bye-week flyers, what he was.
Right. But one of their biggest losses was Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator. They sent him out to the LA Chargers to become their offensive coordinator, and it seems to be doing fine out there. They let Mike McCarthy take over play calling, and Kyle, you remember how that was. I just the guy just keeps getting chances. I don't know if he's got a silver spoon up his ass or what, but the guy just he never runs out of luck. Old Mike McCarthy. They just keep retreading him, as they say.
I think he just has good situations. When he was in
I
Green Bay,
agree.
he had Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron. They won a Super Bowl. They had a really good defense in that playoff run. I know, Aaron, you remember Big BJ Raji with the touchdown. Against the Chicago
Way to pick
Bears.
off Caleb Haney.
Yeah. Hey, they won. I think that was the NFC Championship. They also. I think they blew out the Falcons, who were supposed to be really good, or I think they were the 1 seed, I believe. Might be mistaken. And then I think they maybe beat the Eagles as another team. But the next year they were 15-1. They went on this real big hot streak, lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, who they were that year. They weren't good, but and then it was let down after let down every single year after that. The Packers would get to the playoffs and lose in some sort of fashion to either the 49ers or the Seahawks. Seemed to be the only two teams that would knock them out of the playoffs. And then he took a year off. He's back in Dallas. Dallas has a good offense. Dallas has a good defense. And, with them getting rid of Kellen Moore, if the Cowboys get to the playoffs and don't win a game, do we see Mike McCarthy get fired?
I think either Mike McCarthy or Dak will be gone if they do not make the playoffs. And I know Dak has the contract or whatever, but they'll figure something out. But one of them will be gone if they do not make the playoffs.
I think it'll be McCarthy. I think Jerry Jones will get rid of him. I was shocked when they let Kellen Moore go. I thought his offense. Well, I think even the numbers back it up. I think he had a top 5 offense when he was calling plays. So
I think that was Mike McCarthy trying to do a saving grace type deal because Dak also threw the most interceptions in the league. Yeah. And he was I guess he was basically saying Kellen Moore was, gripping and ripping it basically. And that's why. So I think he was kind of a scapegoat, which kudos to Kellen Moore. He's going to do just fine in LA. So, but
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does with Justin Herbert.
There's a reason why Kellen Moore was able to find an offensive coordinator job
like that
right after being let go, as opposed to Mike McCarthy having to take a year off from being a head coach. So
yeah.
By the way, his TV career, woof! It's a good thing he did. Man,
there's a lot of them like that, man. Sean Payton, I wasn't a big fan of him when he got on TV. Yeah. I don't want to get us sidetracked too much. We got an awful lot to cover. But if McCarthy does get let go, Dan Quinn has former head coaching experience. He's right there on the staff. Possibly that could be the.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah. What? One more time, Corey. What's their first 4 games?
The first 4 games for the Cowboys was. Yeah. Oh.
I know the 4th one was at New England, correct? I think that sounds right.
Yeah. I remember
it was probably a 3-1 start for them, depending on how they.
It was 3-1, 2-2 is basically what it was.
Yeah, I mean they got a ton of horses coming back on defense. That'll be
at the Giants, home against the Jets, at the Cardinals, home against the Patriots.
Giants, Jets, Cardinals, Patriots. Cardinals are going to be awful this year. Yeah. I mean I saw a video from their training camp where the quarterback literally threw it at a wide receiver that was covered, and it doinked off the cornerback's helmet.
Right in the back of the helmet.
Cornerback wasn't.
Yeah.
But we'll move on some, and I think what we'll do is go through all 4 teams and then kind of do a wrap up of how we think it's going to finish out.
I think we have to go over the Giants still.
Yeah, we still got the Giants and Washington, but I'm just letting you guys know we'll go over all 4 of them, and then we'll wrap it all up in a neat little bow at the end and talk about our projections of how we think they're going to finish out. So the New York Giants draft class. They grabbed Deontay Banks, a speedy corner out of Maryland. They grabbed John Michael Schmitz, who I like a lot, a center out of Minnesota. Jalen Hyatt, a speedy wide receiver out of Tennessee. Eric Gray, a running back out of Oklahoma. Trey Hawkins, a defensive back. It just said DB. I don't know if he's a corner or a safety or maybe a hybrid of some sort. Jordan Riley, defensive tackle, and Jorvarius Owens, another safety. The big pick that sticks out to me on this is John Michael Schmitz. I liked him a lot as a draft prospect. I wanted him to be a Bear. He's from the Chicago area, but the Bears passed on him, and he goes to the New York Giants to try and help protect Danny Dimes. He has a wrestling background, which I always love in my offensive linemen because they learn how to use their hands and feet and use leverage against the opponent a lot. I think John Michael Schmitz was a home run draft pick for the New York Giants. Kyle, who sticks out to you?
I really like Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, but I'm also a big, Green Bay never drafts wide receivers in the first round, and neither was Jalen Hyatt, but I love to see the wide receivers, the running backs drafted, everything like that. He looked really good at Tennessee, so I think that one really kind of sticks out most to me, just because the wide receiver room with New York is kind of poor.
Yeah, it's one of the worst. It's probably the worst wide receiver room. The Jalen, I thought that this entire draft, they just picked up some good players. They didn't need something like too much crazy stuff. You could argue they could have taken a wide receiver the first round. Me and Aaron have watched Jalen Hyatt run all over UK.
Yeah,
he's a really good wide receiver, and I think he's going to fit in well there.
Yeah, the only thing that questions me and this goes back to the Tennessee offense. The Bears drafted Bayless Jones Jr. last year out of that offense. They don't learn a whole lot of different routes at Tennessee in that offense. They literally spread the field. Your outside wide receivers are standing on the sideline, so it spreads out your defense. And Jalen Hyatt's fast. I mean, I think he was clocked at 24 miles per hour in a practice, which is even faster than Tyreek Hill. So he's got speed. Maybe they just give him some go balls and see how much Danny Dimes has got.
Yeah, well, as I was saying with Barkley, I mean, Barkley run up the middle, play action, and just throw a bomb and just see what happens. I mean,
yeah. And I mean, if he's not there, we'll get into their key additions here. Their big one was the tight end Darren Waller, who they traded for. They brought in James Robinson, the running back, former 1,000-yard back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cole Beasley, another slot wide receiver, which they must be in love with. And A'Shawn Robinson, a defensive tackle. The name stuck out to me. I couldn't remember where I knew him from. I think he played for Bama or something. I just kind of it was tough to find names for this list. I'm going to be honest with you guys. But obviously the big name is Darren Waller. He's going to be the safety blanket for Daniel Jones. He's going to be the guy he looks to. I mean, essentially, he's their wide receiver one if you look at their wide receiver core. So I mean, I'm sorry I took the easiest name there from you guys. If you guys want to cover anyone else,
I just want to continue because Darren Waller's mad because of Josh McDaniels, so he's going to come in and just tear up. Waller, when healthy, can rival Kelsey and Andrews, in my opinion. And he is going to be wide receiver one, essentially. He low-key is a decent run blocker as well. So that's going to help an already pretty decent line. I think that was huge for them. And Cole Beasley, we've seen what he can do. Vaccine or no. I mean, we've seen what he can do. And he can catch a ball. So
I'm not in love with any of the additions for the Giants. I think it's hard. It's really hard to get behind this team when they decided to give the long-term contract to Daniel Jones over giving it to Saquon Barkley. Daniel Jones threw for 15 touchdowns last year. He didn't even average one passing touchdown a game. He threw for 3,200 yards. Now, he did rush for 700. But Daniel Jones is not the quarterback to get you to the Super Bowl and to win you a Super Bowl. It's not going to happen. And next year, we're going to be sitting here talking, and we're going to be talking about the key departures, and we're going to see Saquon Barkley's name on there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. And as a Bears fan, I looked at if you look at Mitch Trubisky's numbers and Daniel Jones's numbers, they're pretty similar, and one of them got a long-term deal, and the other. I honestly look up the numbers.
I know. It's
the
deal was awful.
The other one is he still in Pittsburgh? I don't even know.
Who knows? The deal was trash. Everybody knows it. Like, at least Flacco had like an incredible playoff. Yeah. Like, that was the thing when he got his money. Like, Daniel Jones can run over a cornerback. Woo. Yeah. Like, so.
What Daniel Jones can't do is he can't take it all the way down the field and score a touchdown, and he'll get tripped over a blade of grass. So.
Yeah, that's true, man. That grass, buddy, too tall.
That's your quarterback, New York Giants. That's your quarterback.
Well, their key departures, Richie James, wide receiver, went to Kansas City. He was a nice little piece. They got a decent amount of play. I haven't heard a word of him out of Kansas City. I don't know how he's gelling with Patrick Mahomes or anything, but he could be good there. Julian Love, the safety, went to Seattle. Kenny Golladay and Landon Collins are still free agents. Again, this was another list that I really struggled to find.
Yeah, you had to search for this stuff.
Right? I did some deep dives for this. I was supposed to be watching my son's football practice. I was doing homework instead, and I felt like a nerd. And my wife even called me a nerd last night.
The only thing I have to say about this one really is Kenny Golladay. Like, I hate it that he just didn't work out. And we see these stories all the time, but like, I don't think he's doing well with it either. And it's a shame. Like, yeah. Somebody might take a flyer on him in week 9 or 10 when all the injuries start piling up, because he's going to be veterans minimum. So, I mean, it might be worth a shot if he's healthy and he keeps working out. But
I mean, he's got the size, the speed, everything you look for in a wide receiver. He just doesn't have the hands. Which,
I mean, I have as many touchdowns as he does in the past 2 years.
I'll tell you what he has is he has a fat wallet, because he signed a big contract with the Giants, and then he just disappeared. You know, yeah. I don't. Who's Kenny Golladay with the New York Giants? Because I don't think he ever played. You know, he was.
He played. He played a little bit.
He did. But I mean, the biggest departure of this one, and like you said, Aaron, it's hard. But Richie James is probably the biggest one. He played a significant role down the stretch and really stepped up to become that wide receiver 1 for the Giants the last few weeks of the season. And I mean, he benefited heavily from doing that, and he gets to now go play with Patrick Mahomes. Not saying that he's going to catch a ton of balls in Kansas City or anything like that, but he now gets the chance to put on tape him playing with Patrick Mahomes and potentially parlaying that into even more money, whereas if he would have came back to the Giants playing with Daniel Jones, it could have fizzled out pretty quick.
Richie James is currently wide receiver 5 right now as it stands, so.
Pretty far down the depth chart. He's fighting for a job. Maybe we'll see him in some preseason action coming up soon. So we'll get into the final team of the NFC East, the Washington Commanders, who apparently they have to change their name again after this season because they didn't get the trademark for that name. I think Magic Johnson bought the team, or is a minority owner now or something.
Very minority owner, yes.
I think there's 14 minority owners or something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a $6 billion is what they paid for the team. So we'll see what Washington turns their name into. Maybe they just go back to the Washington football team. I mean, it sounded fine to me. It sounded a little soccer-y maybe, but
if it was club, yes, definitely. But yeah, I'm not a fan of any of the three.
I think what they need to do with the team name is they need to embrace, and I don't remember what year this movie came out, but they need to bring in Keanu Reeves. And they need to just embrace and become the Washington Sentinels. And I think that would really just be, I think it would be great for them.
I think let their fans get on it and kind of vote on a new team name. That'd be kind of cool. That's how the Savannah Bananas became a thing in minor league baseball. They used to be the Sand Gnats and became the Bananas off a pole from Savannah. But that's neither here nor there. I continue to get sidetracked. I do apologize. I know we have a long show. So Washington's draft class, they drafted Emmanuel Forbes, the corner out of Mississippi State in the first round. They followed that up with another corner, Jatavius Martin. They followed that up with Ricky Stromberg, the center out of Arkansas, who's we'll get into that. Brandon Daniels, a guard. KJ Henry, defensive end from Clemson. Chris Rodriguez Jr. from University of Kentucky, and Andre Jones Jr., an outside linebacker. Emmanuel Forbes is small, guys. I mean, all he did was pick off passes and take them for 6 in college, but I think he's like a buck 60, literally. This kid, I mean, I feel sorry for him when some of these bigger wide receivers get a hold of him, man. But that was a shocking pick to me, and we'll get into why a little bit later, definitely in this show. But
I think
Kyle,
the biggest thing, yeah, the biggest thing that sticks out, and it's not really who, but it's what, and it's going back to back with those corners. You know, you're in a division with the Eagles who have Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, and the Cowboys adding Brandon Cooks to go with CD Lamb, and they don't need anybody to cover the Giants wide receivers, but they're trying to keep pace with the Eagles and the Cowboys and be able to shut down their weapons. So that's really big is corners back to back there.
I think apparently me and Kyle had a meeting before this show started because I'm the same way. Like they had a decent draft. They're just picking some players right now. Sam Howell looks like he's going to be the starter. The biggest draft, I guess, that they get, which was wild that Dan Snyder was in charge of this somewhat, was the fact that Josh Harris bought the team with Magic Johnson and all them. That's the biggest win for Washington right now. So if they do, if they go less than 8-1, it's still a win because no longer is Dan Snyder running this franchise. So to me, that's the biggest win for the Washington football team, and they could just build from there at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
Especially because Dallas and Philadelphia are up right now. They're so up, and even the Giants, they had 3 teams make the playoffs last year. So there's nothing wrong with trying to do a little rebuild action right now. Just see what you got.
Yeah, and they talked about, as I said at the beginning, about players complaining that offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy was being a little too rough. I definitely don't think that came from the running back room, where you have Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky and Brian Robinson from Alabama. Yeah. I mean, if you know anything about Mark Stoops or Nick Saban, you know they're going to run a hard-nosed program, and they're going to get the best out of what the talent that they have. That's why they're the 2, I believe, longest tenured SEC coaches, which is a little shocking to some to know that Kentucky's head coach is right up there with Alabama's, to be honest. But we'll get into some of their additions and departures. Again, this was one that obviously I struggled with. Jacoby Brissett, a quarterback who, I mean, he's fine. He's a consummate professional who just comes in and does his job. Byron Pringle, a wide receiver that played for the Bears last year, and he's another guy who, if he didn't play for your team, you probably didn't know anything about him. Nick Gates, a guard. Andrew Wiley, the offensive tackle from Kansas City. And I had to throw Michael Badgley, the kicker, on there because literally I guess people just free agents didn't want to sign with Washington because it was very difficult. Obviously, if you put a kicker on the list of additions, it's hard to find guys, you know.
Brissett for me is the number one here. We've seen Pringle have a couple good plays in Kansas City, but Brissett, he could be the starter. I think they like Sam Howell, but like we've seen Brissett play. Off the top of my head, Scary Terry might be the best receiver he's ever had, I think. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows who's actually going to be the starter there? But Brissett can handle it. I don't know. I think that's a good pickup for them.
Sure. And I would agree with you that the name that sticks out on this list is Jacoby Brissett, but for me personally, I don't think they brought Jacoby in to be the starting quarterback. They brought Jacoby in to be that veteran and to lead Sam Howell and to teach him the game. I mean, Jacoby's played with Tom Brady in New England. He went on to Indianapolis, where I believe he played with Andrew Luck for a little bit before he became the starter. And then he went to Cleveland, where he was able to learn from, Deshaun Watson as well. So he's been around some really, really good quarterbacks, and he's going to be able to bring that to Sam Howell. And fun fact about Sam Howell is his first NFL career pass attempt was a touchdown, and I believe it was against the Dallas Cowboys.
Nice.
Well, I'm sure Washington fans are happy to hear about that. Anytime they can get a dig in on the Cowboys.
And as I was going to say, as Aaron could say too, Sam Powell is probably the best quarterback in a while from North Carolina.
Yeah. Hey, you're not going to get an argument out of me. I wanted Watson in that draft. I will not argue with you.
I had to take a jab when I could.
Yeah. I mean, Hal, his junior year in college, he was projected as like a first-round pick, and then he went back for his senior year and just fell off a cliff. He lost a ton of weapons at North Carolina and kind of reverted to your typical North Carolina quarterback, which if we get into draft for next year, we'll talk about another North Carolina quarterback.
Let me go back to Sam Howell real quick. Not only was his first pass an NFL touchdown, but they also beat the Dallas Cowboys that game too.
Nice.
Washington's feisty, man. I watched the Bears go up there on a Thursday night, and even though the Bears were bad at that time, we didn't know how bad we were going to be. And literally, they did a goal line stand, knocked Mooney out of the end zone to win the game. So I mean, they fight. That's one thing you'll get from a Ron Rivera team, I guess, is they're going to fight for their team. But we'll get into their key departures. Number one is Taylor Heineke, the quarterback. He went to Atlanta. Trey Turner, a guard, went to New Orleans. Cam Dantzler, a corner, went to Buffalo. Cole Holcomb, a linebacker, went to Pittsburgh. Carson Wentz is sitting on free agency, as is J.D. McKissick. And the reason I put Carson Wentz in here is because him and Taylor Heineke are there. So it's literally the Sam Howell. It's his job to lose because they got rid of everybody else. So maybe part of this is kind of cleaning out the organization as they sold it. Brand new quarterback, lost some old linemen, a linebacker. But, I mean, that was really the only reason why I put those two quarterbacks on there is because those guys they took a bulk of the snaps last year, you know?
Yeah.
Taylor Heineke sticks out to me the most, and the reason being is not last year, but in 2021 when they made the playoffs, and he had that phenomenal run against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I believe the Buccaneers defense that year was ranked, if not number one, they were ranked very, very high, but I think he dove into the corner of the end zone, and he just had that moxie about him. He had that vibe with him, you know, and I feel like Taylor Heineke, who bounced around the league before, really kind of fit that club as their starting quarterback. So seeing them move on from him and going away from Carson Wentz too, which I think Carson Wentz will probably, because he is technically a Super Bowl winner. He didn't, play in the Super Bowl, but he has a championship ring. I wouldn't be surprised to see him land with somebody like the Green Bay Packers to come in as a veteran backup and help lead Jordan Love as well. But losing those two quarterbacks and also Cole Holcomb, Trey Turner, I mean, more losses on this team than really additions.
Mm-hmm.
I will say real quick about Carson Wentz. I thought I got Ballsack Sports when I seen that tweet that he put out with the Eagles helmet, a red Commanders jersey, and Colts shorts. And he said something like, "I'm ready to go" or whatever. Like, that was weird. That was weird. I don't know if he just was like, "Hey, I'm still after guys," but like it was strange to me.
Yeah. What's the nickname that you like to call Taylor Heineke, Corey?
Green Lizard.
What's that? I've only heard you say it. Where's
he's explained it a couple times on some podcasts, and I can't remember to save my life because it was white noise. But somebody gave him that name, and it's just stuck. And he was like, "Yeah, it's fine." Because I think he even has a tattoo of a lizard now, like on his forearm or something. I think.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask you about that because I've heard you talk about him before on a different podcast, and I wanted to.
But it makes zero sense. But yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'll go back up here and put up the team totals for wins as we kind of round out as a whole the NFC East. Honestly, I think it's Philly's to lose. I mean, even though they're replacing both coordinators, you got your quarterback coming back, and as I said earlier, you got your O-line coming back. You replace running backs. You've still got weapons. You plug and play defensive players from Georgia, which is always a safe bet to go with the way they honestly dominate college football with that defense. I think Philly takes this division, and I think they hit the over on that 11.5. Word out of camp with Dallas, I've seen Dak Prescott throw multiple interceptions, and his corners are talking trash to him. As much as I'd like to pull for them, I like Micah Parsons a lot. I just don't think they can keep up with Philly with the roster that they have, top to bottom.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. And the NFC East, the win totals that's going on the bottom of the screen right now is I see that being the way that they finish: Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders in that order. And I think the Eagles are going to run away with this division this year, and probably win that division by 3, 4, 5 games, maybe.
I'll go with I think Dallas will be under, but they'll make the playoffs. Philly will definitely be way over and win this division, but hands down.
All right.
Jalen Hurts won't even play week 18.
So, I mean, the Commanders might have a top 3 pick next year, and we'll see a different quarterback in for them. Well, we're 50 minutes in, fellas. So we, as I said, we would probably go over. We did, but I'll get into the AFC East standings from last year. The Bills went 13-3. The Dolphins went 9-8. The Patriots went 8-9, and the Jets went 7-10. The Hard Knocks leading Jets. I didn't watch it last night, but even when Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay, I can't get him off my screen. I don't know what to do with my life. And the win totals: Bills at 10.5, Dolphins at 9.5, Jets a big bump, 9.5. You can call that the Aaron Rodgers bump. And the Patriots are sitting there at 6.5. We'll just jump right in and start with Buffalo. They won the division last year. They what is going on with my stuff? So they're I thought I had this as a ticker, but I don't. So Buffalo's draft class, they went with Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, in the first round. They followed that up with Cyrus Torrance, the guard out of Florida, in the second round. Dorian Williams, a linebacker. Justin Shorter, a wide receiver. Nick Brocker, a guard, and Alex Austin, a corner. I'm going to go with the first round pick, Dalton Kincaid, the tight end. This gives them the ability to go into 12 personnel and have Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid on the field at the same time. Gives you the ability to let Josh Allen do what Josh Allen does. He can run, he can throw, he can do it all. And with their offensive line, it kind of helps to have 2 tight ends, to be honest. What sticks out to you, Kyle?
I was really surprised that they took a tight end in the first round, to be honest. I figured they'd get in on the wide receivers or something of that nature and give Josh Allen another weapon in that regard, because Dawson Knox at times last year flashed. He wasn't like a top 10 tight end or anything like that, but this offense spread them out. Get you 3, 4, 5 wide receivers, and because they don't have a running back that's going to shoulder that load. James Cook will probably start for them, but who do you go with after that? It's they lost, and we'll get into the losses and stuff soon. But I don't know. I think that they wide receiver early could have potentially been better with maybe a tight end later in the draft.
They open at New York Jets, home against Vegas, at the Commanders, and then home against Miami. I'm going to go with Dalton Kincaid because he's one of the best catching tight ends we've seen in a long time. I think he will be a good slot guy, and I think James Cook makes a huge step this year. I'm a big believer in James Dalvin Cook. That is his middle name, by the way. And Dalvin is James Cook, so yeah, that's weird. But I think they'll do a little bit more running, a little bit more weird stuff as far as passing goes. I do see Dawson Knox out there with Kincaid. Kincaid's a better catcher. Dawson's a better blocker. So I have no problem with him being picked in the first round by them.
And we have to remember that Sean McDermott is a defensive head coach, so he's going to want to play ball control and play good defense and win ball games that way. It kind of scares me as a Bears fan when the entire league is zigging. The Bills and Bears and a couple of other teams are zagging and going with defensive head coaches. We'll see how it all plays out. I do like the Cyrus Torrance pick a lot. A guard out of Florida who should have been a first-round pick in my eyes. He dropped to the second round. I have no idea why. We'll see how it works out. But they got to keep Josh Allen upright, and getting big boys up front is how you do that. So their key additions, they grabbed Connor McGovern, who we talked about earlier. So now they have 2 new guards. They grabbed Leonard Floyd, an outside linebacker who's kind of bounced around the league after, he went to LA and won a ring. He was a draft pick of Chicago and didn't really fit. Taylor Rapp out of LA as well. Brandon Shell, an offensive tackle. They brought back Cam Dantzler and Deontay Hardy, a wide receiver. I really just added him because we talked about wide receivers earlier, Kyle. That's the only one of note that I saw in their free agency pickups, if it's even really of note, to be honest. Who sticks out to you guys?
For me, it's the first 3: Connor McGovern, Leonard Floyd, Taylor Rapp. I believe Connor McGovern was used in that fullback beef offense for the Cowboys to help and clear the way for Zeke. And Leonard Floyd, he's that vet. He's going to come in and potentially play on the opposite side of Von Miller. And then Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp, he was good in LA. So.
Floyd, for me, I still think he has a lot left in the tank, and I think him opposite of Von Miller is huge. They're going to need as much help as they can on defense.
Yeah, and we'll get into it a little later, but that first week against the Jets, that's going to be huge for Leonard Floyd, Von Miller, and company. But their key departures, they lost Tremaine Edmonds to the Chicago Bears, inside linebacker. They lost Case Keenum, who was their backup quarterback, to Houston. Devin Singletary also went to Houston. Jamison Crowder, a wide receiver, went to the Giants, and Greg Van Roten, a guard, went to Las Vegas. Is it Rotten or Roten? I don't know. He was on their free agency list, so I added him. The biggest one to me here, I'm going to take the home run swing. It's Tremaine Edmonds. He was the leader on their defense. They drafted him. He was drafted the same year as Roquan Smith, and that was a big arguing point on Bears Twitter and with Bears fans alike was, do we like Tremaine or do we like Roquan? We knew we needed a linebacker. We just didn't know which one was which, and Tremaine fits the 4-3 better than Roquan did. He's more of a 3-4 linebacker, which fit our defense at the time. I think it's a huge loss, and reports out of Bills camp, a lot of guys that were Bills fans thought it would just be really pretty easy to replace Tremaine Edmonds with a defensive head coach and draft picks and this and that. But they haven't seen anyone really step up in that spot. So we'll see how it plays out for the Buffalo Bills defense.
Yeah, Tremaine definitely sticks out for me as well. And losing Case Keenum too. You go from Case Keenum as your backup quarterback, who's one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league, to now you have Kyle Allen. If Josh Allen goes down and you bring in, big brother Kyle Allen, they're not really related, but that's going to be a completely different offense. And I'm curious what's going on or what the relationship between Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs looks like too.
Yeah, but going back to the pre-show meeting that apparently me and Kyle had, Case Keenum is huge for me because if it ain't Kyle Allen, it's Matt Barkley. Like Case Keenum, they loved him there, so I'm not really sure what happened there. Like you said, Case Keenum is one of the better backups in the league. So, and Jamison Crowder, we talked about the wide receivers. Jamison Crowder he's had some very nice spots, and I could see him, him and Josh Allen for a 60-yard bomb 3 times this year. So he's gone. I think that is kind of a hit too.
I'm surprised neither one of you brought up Devin Singletary. That was the guy that was supposed to shoulder the load last year.
I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like I'm out on Devin Singletary. I think their running back room is, like I said, I'm big on James Dalvin Cook. I think, and they got Damian Harris, who will be healthy again. Latavius Murray is there as well. Like I think they'll be fine back there.
Well, they're still favored to take this division with the win totals. According to DraftKings. We'll get into the next team, the Miami Dolphins. In their draft class, they didn't have a first-round pick. They forfeited because they tampered with Tom Brady. Second round, they came back and got Cam Smith, corner. They grabbed Devin Achin, a running back out of Texas A&M, Elijah Higgins, a wide receiver, and they rounded out their draft with Ryan Hayes, an offensive lineman from Michigan. They just didn't have a ton of picks. That's really what it comes down to. So really what sticks out to me is taking a swing on Ryan Hayes in the 7th round. the Michigan offensive line last year was, I mean, they were road graders. I'll be completely honest. So if you're going to take a swing on an offensive lineman late in the draft, that's a pretty good school to grab them from for the way they played last year.
Yeah, Devin. For me, real quick. Sorry, for me, it's Devin out of Texas A&M. They have a bunch of studs back there, some traveling studs back there as running backs. But it's Josh McDaniel. Oh, I'm sorry, Josh McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel. I get them all mixed up. But I think it's going to be like a plug and play for the most part, kind of like a Kyle Shanahan. It doesn't matter who's back there. Get a healthy body, get somebody that's good, fast, big, strong, and see what happens with those two receivers that they have. I think they'll be fine.
Yeah. And going back to our pre-draft meeting there, Corey, it's the running back out of Texas A&M. For me, I don't think he's going to have a huge year this year, and my reason being is Mike McDaniel. The two running backs, even if you count Myles Gaskin as well, but the other two, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr., were both running backs that played in San Francisco when Mike McDaniel was a coordinator in San Francisco. So I think, you have those veterans that you trust, and you bring in this rookie now who's got to kind of earn that trust and show that he can be the leader of that backfield. But I think it's going to be kind of a three-headed monster.
Yeah, and Cam Smith has a little bit more to him than he did originally with Jalen Ramsey going down with an injury and being out, I think, the first 6 weeks or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Devin Nation. We'll get into their additions and departures. Their key additions this year, they grabbed David Long, a linebacker from Tennessee, who I had my eyes on when Bears were looking for a linebacker, and he went to Miami. We ended up with Edmonds. I'm okay with it. Mike White, the backup quarterback from the New York Jets, who they kind of thought was going to be their savior for a split second there last year. Isaiah Wynn, offensive tackle. I haven't never heard of him. I'm not sure where he's from. Or
I'm pretty sure I'm
messing with you, Corey. Braxton Berrios, a wide receiver, slot guy. Dan Feeney, a guard, and then Burnt Toast, a.k.a. Eli Apple, a corner they brought in. The key addition for me is David Long. I'm going to be excited to see him in, and I guess I should have put him on here, Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator they brought in. I love Vic. I think he's one of the best defensive minds in the league, and you give him a solid linebacker and the pieces that they have on their defense in Miami, I think it's going to go. I think it's going to help them a lot this year, honestly. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm more of a skills type of guy. Not saying that offensive, defensive linemen don't have the skills, but Mike White, and I wouldn't say that he sticks out to me in a positive way. Mike White is the best backup quarterback you can get behind Tua, who had concussion problems last year. Let's not forget that the Dolphins made the playoffs last year and played the Bills, and their quarterback was Skylar Thompson, and they lost by 3 points, 34-31. Imagine what this team could have done had Tua stayed healthy.
And Teddy Bridgewater just signed with Detroit like yesterday, so he was there.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't really understand that, unless there's something. I'm not a quarterback guru or anything like that, but I may be missing something with Mike White. But he was kind of up and down last year with the Jets.
For me, it's Isaiah Wynn, especially. I seen what he could do. Damn it. And then we're also forgetting too that it's not on the screen. The reason they got Burnt Toast is because Jalen Ramsey was also added. And now I haven't seen the update of his injury, but he's not going to be out the entire season. So
yeah, he could be an addition and a departure because he's going to miss the first half of the season.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean, but like at the end, maybe when it matters in November, December, January, he might come back, and him across from Xavier Howard. I think and the Mike White one is really nice too. But yeah, I think Miami killed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of what they added. So here are some of their departures. They lost Mike Gesicki. He went to New England, I believe. Brandon Shell, an offensive tackle. Eric Rowe, who just continues to bounce around the league. Trey Flowers, a defensive tackle. And aforementioned Teddy Bridgewater, a quarterback that they let sit on the market and go to Detroit. I don't know what that says about the quarterback that they just drafted. The biggest one here for obvious reasons, in my opinion, is Mike Gesicki. He's a tight end. He doesn't block. He cannot block. So he's essentially an extra wide receiver. And I think that's the reason they let him go. But boy, he's a hell of a tight end catching the football.
My thing was, but with him was he really didn't fit for some reason in Mike McDaniel's thing. Like it didn't work, and they were kind of vocal about it. So, I mean, I guess it's our gain. I guess we'll see. Who knows? For me, it's Trey Flowers. Darn, I don't know where he went. Could y'all remind me where he went back to?
Maybe later in the episode we can
okay.
Yeah, Mike Gesicki for me too. I mean, not to say that. I mean, I will say it. The Dolphins under Mike McDaniel run a completely different offense than the 49ers. You have the two of the fastest wide receivers in the league, and they didn't use Gesicki last year. He disappeared. And they don't really need. I think they have Cedric Wilson Jr. as their third wide receiver, but they're not going to use a third wide receiver. It's either going to Tyreek or it's going to Waddle. So learn how to cover those guys. And then they've got those two corners as well. So Gesicki, while it's a key departure, I don't think they lost a lot in losing him, but he's still a really good tight end.
Yeah. Just for that scheme, it's just not.
He was underutilized in 2022 for the Miami Dolphins.
Just don't ask him to gritty.
There'll be none of that in New England.
Yeah, you can assure that. Yeah. Well, speaking of New England, let's get into them. Start with their draft class. This was the only draft class I could not fit on one banner because they had so many day 3 picks. They started off the draft. I believe they traded back, correct, Corey?
Yes.
So they traded back
down,
originally.
Left and right about 3 times.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they ended up with Christian Gonzalez, a corner out of Oregon. That's a steal of the fucking draft. They grabbed Keon White, a defensive end out of Georgia Tech, Marte Mapo, a safety, Jake Andrews, a center, Chad Ryland, a kicker, Saidi So, a guard, Antonio Mafi, another guard, Kayshawn Booty, a wide receiver out of LSU, Bryce Behringer, the punter, Demario Douglas, a wide receiver, and Amir Speed, a corner. And they had another corner. I had it wrote down, but I can't remember. But still, I mean, they drafted every position. This should probably be their key additions is their draft class. The big one to me is Christian Gonzalez. The guy, he was a beast. He should have been the first corner off the board, and the NFL fucked around and let Bill Belichick get his hands on the best corner out of the draft. It's really a shame. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I was yelling in my living room by myself, and I didn't even care because I was so jacked that we got that. Also, I love Keon White out of Georgia Tech too. I was actually pretty excited about Jake Andrews, the center from Troy. But my favorite one is I'm all about the booty from LSU. We've seen him play, and I know there's a few issues with him, but like we have seen him play, and I think under this program he's going to do great.
Yeah,
and he's got plenty of room to grow. So
I need you to get out of my head.
Right well, we just got to quit having pre-show meetings.
We have just been locked in with each other because I was hoping you wouldn't say anything. I wanted to look really cool, but I mean, potentially steal the draft. Kayshawn Boutte, whatever. I watched a lot of him in LSU in 2021, and he was the number one target for that team. And going to a team that has, Bill Belichick at head coach that's when you really can't mess around anymore. That's one of the most just kind of, I wouldn't say stern, but he's just, when you go there, you either make it or you don't. And it's based off of the way that you carry yourself. Yeah. So that's going to be it for Kayshawn.
It's at the end of the day, it's the Patriot way. And either they shit talk it because they couldn't handle it, or everybody's like, look, it works. And we followed it, and it was fine.
And I think that's one for me that's really going to stick out. Probably late in the season, we'll see him really coming on and kind of being a staple point for this Patriots offense if he can keep his head right.
Yep.
Yeah, he actually got hurt when they played Kentucky his junior year, but before that, he was He was tearing it up, and he's a guy that I liked a lot in the pre-draft process, and we'll see how he does in New England. But we'll get into their other key additions. They added Juju Smith-Schuster, the wide receiver, this offseason. They added Mike Gesicki, a tight end, Calvin Anderson, an offensive tackle, Riley Reef, another offensive tackle who's about 572 years old this year, and then they brought back Trey Flowers, who I'm sure I know where Corey's going with this, so I'm going to tee that up for him. I'm going to take Juju Smith-Schuster. He had a bit of a resurgence of his career going to Kansas City, and like you guys said, you either fall in line with the Patriot way or you falter out. And we're going to see what happens with Juju out there in New England. Won't be any TikTok dances or anything like that. But hopefully he still is able to have some fun. And I'm kind of glad that the Patriots went out and got a couple of weapons for Mac Jones, who had a really solid rookie year and then had a defensive coordinator literally calling plays for him last year. And we'll see how he bounces back this year. Go ahead, Kyle.
So, I'm really surprised with the Juju Smith-Schuster because that doesn't seem like something the Patriots would do. But Mike Gesicki sticks out for me in this one. I think that he's going to be heavily utilized in this offense. And 2 or 3 years ago, they signed Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry to huge contracts, and those guys didn't really pan out. And now we're seeing them bring in Gesicki from, Miami, a division rival. And I think that we're going to see him be, kind of leaned on with whichever quarterback is under center, whether it be Jones or Bailey Zappi. But Gesicki, I think, is a really, really big get here.
I'll just fire off real quick. Juju proved me wrong. I hated that signing. I don't like his antics. Neither will Bill Belichick. So figure it out. Maybe it gets better. Mike Gesicki coming in. We can turn tight ends into certain people, even with Jonnu Smith and stuff. I know they vanished, but like us getting him for next to nothing, I love it. I remember what Trey Flowers did when we first had him. He's back home where he belongs. He already got his bag, and he's come back. So I also think the biggest addition is Bill O'Brien back. He's back. And Bill O'Brien, when he is the offensive coordinator, they've had some really, really good years. So I think he's going to be perfect to help out Mac Jones, and I'm just glad that he's back in the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, that's good, man. That you got an offensive coordinator actually calling plays this year, so that
it helps
out.
Yeah. And so, but that being said, we'll still finish last in the division.
We'll get into it. Key departures, you got Jacoby Myers, a wide receiver, went to Vegas. Nelson Aguilar, a wide receiver, went to Baltimore. Isaiah Wynn, who we mentioned earlier, went to Miami. Damian Harris goes to Buffalo. And James Robinson went to the New York Giants. I didn't remember James Robinson playing for the Patriots.
He did.
He did. Well, he was on their free agent list.
He didn't. I think we signed him and then
signed him this offseason. Yeah.
Yeah. So he didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can disregard.
I was actually excited about it. And then I guess it just flat out didn't fit, which whatever. But
yeah. I mean, the biggest thing on here to me is I got to take Isaiah Wynn. He was the left tackle. He locked down that side. You would think the Patriot way, they extend, they invest in their offensive line. They don't spend big on weapons and stuff like that. They win ball games in the trenches. And that's the big one that sticks out to me because you didn't really see a ton from the other ones, in my opinion. Damian Harris I like a lot because he's a Kentucky guy, but it's a split backfield. So, I mean, are you really losing a ton? They just rinse and repeat in New England,
For me, it's not Damian Harris because even though he's from Kentucky, he went to Alabama. People don't forget.
When Bama comes calling, dude, you go.
Isaiah Wynn's the huge one, but really, when you think about it, we get what out of the first rookie contract we can from people, and then for the most part, we don't pay anybody. We just don't. So that was not a shocker. It sucked, but it wasn't a shocker. But Isaiah Wynn is clearly the biggest one here.
I think one thing that's going to really hurt them as of right now, is at this moment in time, is losing Damian Harris, because behind Ramondre Stevenson right now, your number 2 running back is Ty Montgomery. Then you have Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris. I don't know what exact order they're in or anything like that, but they're going to be in trouble at that running back position. I know they brought in Leonard Fournette for workout and everything like that too, but they really heavily addressed that wide receiver area. Losing Jacoby Myers, losing Nelson Aguilar, I don't think really hurts them. They signed Devontae Parker to a long-term deal. They brought in Mike Gesicki. They drafted Kayshawn. They still have Kendrick Bourne. Now they just, let's see if Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi can start airing it out, because we'll see if Ramondre can play a whole season.
I will say real quick too on that is Bill Belichick really does love Pierre Strong. So we'll see if maybe he's gotten better in camp or something. And I still don't think it's the end of the world that we wouldn't see like potentially a Zeke or Leonard Fournette. I know he left the facility, but he may come back. Something like that.
Hunt's been taking a ton of.
He just
New
signed.
Orleans and
he just signed
Indianapolis.
He just signed. He's expecting to sign with New Orleans.
They could also bring in Dalvin James Cook.
Yeah, they could, and I think Dalvin James Cook is going to land in one of those teams. One of those teams he's going to land on. But
is it perhaps the New York Jets who we're talking about now?
My headphones keep dying. Sorry.
The New York Jets in the draft, they grabbed Will McDonald, an edge out of Iowa State, Joe Tippmann, a center out of Wisconsin, Carter Warren, an offensive tackle, Israel Abanaconda. I worked on that one. A running back. Zaire Barnes, a linebacker. Jarek Barnes, Converse, a corner, and Zach Kuntz, a tight end out of Old Dominion. As much as I want to talk about Joe Tippmann and how much I love that draft pick, the center out of Wisconsin, just a big old dude with a flowing mullet, the typical offensive lineman you'd think. I love Zach Kuntz. He's a tight end out of Old Dominion who was tearing up the pre-draft process, and I think he's going to give Rodgers a guy to catch. If he doesn't make the team and he ends up on the practice squad, he's a guy to watch out for in the future, to be completely frank. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, and I think one thing for me on this one is you kind of already said it. Joe Tippmann. Anybody that comes across this, sees this, watching right now, go Google this guy. Yeah. And he just looks like a 1970s offensive lineman. Yeah. This guy just has a look about him that's just phenomenal. I
probably
hope that
smoking heaters on the sideline.
Oh, absolutely. I hope that he has a great career, because this dude just looks awesome. Israel Abanaconda, I don't think I said it right, reminds me of Tim Biakabatuka. Not by styles or anything like that, but just by their names. Surprised to see them. Surprised to see them. Kind of surprised, not surprised, am surprised. I don't know. Surprised to see them take that running back and then still be talking about adding Dalvin James Cook to this roster as well.
For me, it was just a little extra insurance, maybe, because they didn't know with Breece Hall. They didn't know they would have a chance with Dalvin James Cook. So, and I think the Jets honestly were more concerned. The draft wasn't bad, but they were more concerned with what was going to happen in free agency. Mm-hmm. So, I think they just took best available in certain areas and stuff like that. But I think free agency was their main concern at the end of the day.
Yeah. I love the name Jarek Barnes Converse. If he was a Bear, I would probably buy the jersey just to have the last name. It just sounds cool. So their key additions, they didn't do a whole lot. They
smidge.
Traded
bartered the entire Green Bay Packer team, but
they traded for a guy named Aaron Rodgers, a 39-year-old quarterback who goes on darkness retreats and drinks ayahuasca tea. He's okay. Alan Lazard, they brought in his wide receiver from Green Bay and his other one, Randall Cobb. And they grabbed his safety, Adrian Amos, from Green Bay as well. They brought in an offensive lineman, Wes Schweitzer, Mecole Hardman, wide receiver formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs, and Al Woods, big defensive tackle. Where else can you go but Aaron Rodgers? The guy, as much as I hate him, he played for Green Bay. He's a future Hall of Famer, Super Bowl winning quarterback, and from everything I've heard on Hard Knocks, they're using that as Aaron Rodgers' PR firm. and really trying to change the narrative of his outlook from the outside world, where they're saying don't listen to anything you see on TV, blah blah blah. So I mean, we'll see how it works out. We Kyle, I'll let you can probably speak on it a little more. We know how Rodgers ends up when he doesn't do so well.
You talk about all these accolades that Aaron Rodgers has, and you forget to mention that he's the majority owner of the Chicago Bears.
No, that's not
it.
bringing Aaron Rodgers in is going to completely change that organization, and from what I've seen right now, it's going to change it for the better. The Aaron Rodgers that Green Bay had for the last few years was an Aaron Rodgers who just seemed real pissed off at the organization. He 2 MVP seasons. And I think that the last few years, he's a very, very smart individual. And I think that he's been planning this exit for a while, kind of like Tom Brady was planning his exit from the Patriots. Yeah. And he took kind of any avenue and any advantage that he could to get out of there, and taking that massive pay cut with the Jets too, to kind of make it a more team-friendly deal. This is going to be a scary team. He gets a lot of players on that roster who he's familiar with: Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Adrian Amos, Billy Turner, Tim Boyle. The list goes on of former Packers that are playing on that team. And it's and he's going to have a lot of weapons in that offense too.
Yeah, the thing for me is I'm going to go off script here completely. Last year, CJ Uzama came in to the Jets organization after having a stellar year with the Bengals. And then he did basically kind of nothing last year. But I think Aaron Rodgers coming here, I think CJ Uzama has a huge year. Because I think with Joe Burrow his last year, he had 55 targets roughly, or 63 targets. I think he can reach that again. And I think that is technically not an addition this year, but I think adding that with everything else, and Garrett Wilson's there, so he's got plenty of weapons to throw to. So
yeah, and generally, or looking back at the years, Aaron Rodgers never really targeted his tight end. The best, I wouldn't even say the best tight end Aaron Rodgers has had was Jermichael Finley. And I don't remember his stats or anything exactly like that, but Rodgers isn't really one to target that tight end. But CJ Uzama does kind of remind me of Mercedes Lewis, that bigger guy in the locker room who's going to help kind of lead this team as well, because they're still a younger team. Even though they've added some of these vets, they still have a lot of young guys on this roster too.
Yeah.
I'm not saying draft, CJ Uzama, tight end 4. I'm just saying, I think it's his best tight end he's had in a while.
Yeah, that's true. We'll get into their key departures. Sheldon Rankins, a big defensive tackle, went to Houston. Mike White, who we talked about earlier, went to Miami. Braxton Berrios went with him to Miami, as well as Dan Feeney. I guess they're just trying to build the New York Jets South down there. George Fant, an offensive tackle, went to Houston. Quan Alexander, inside linebacker, went to Pittsburgh, and Joe Flacco is currently a free agent. So they went from one old guy to another. The big name for me on this is George Fant, the offensive tackle, and we'll kind of get into it a little more when we talk about where we're projecting these teams. But the one thing the Packers always had, they may not have had first-round receivers, but they damn sure kept Aaron Rodgers upright. And I don't know if the Jets can do that with a 37-year-old left tackle and a right tackle who plays 7 snaps in the preseason game and says his knee was bothering him and pulled himself out. I don't know. I mean, we'll get into it more later, but the big name for me on here is the offensive lineman that they lost in New York in front of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's 39. The guy's he's not fleet of foot, Go ahead, Kyle. Who sticks out to you?
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna kind of take a turn here. Is they lost a lot of big uns. They lost Sheldon Rankins, the defensive tackle. They lose Dan Freeney, the guard. They lose George Fant, the offensive tackle. They lose a lot of guys up front. Your big, nasty, mean, linemen. And I think that's going to, could potentially come back to bite them.
For me, I actually don't. I think Quan Alexander is quietly just a good hard worker who doesn't get a lot of praise. Besides the Mike White one, I think that one's the biggest one.
Yeah. Sounds an awful lot like he'll fit right in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll kill in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. One other fun fact, because I like to throw these out there, is Rodgers will have the chance to add a third first-round pick to catch a touchdown pass from him and Garrett Wilson. The other 2 first-round picks who have caught a touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers is tight end Mercedes Lewis and cornerback William Jackson, the third of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Nice.
Wow. It was a pick 6.
So the win totals again for this division: the Bills are at 10.5, Dolphins are at 9.5, Jets at 9.5, Patriots at 6.5. I think the Dolphins win this. Corey, I asked you earlier if you could possibly bring up when the Patriots and when the Bills, and hell, we can even say the Jets. When do they travel down to South Beach? Because they get a home field advantage down there. The way the Dolphins set up their stadium, they'll wear white and they'll make you wear your dark uniforms and they'll stand you in the heat all day long. The Bears tried to do this a couple years back. They wore orange to try and offset it. Obviously that didn't work, but they have big home field advantage in Miami. The biggest question mark on this team is if Tua can stay healthy. I think the defensive coordinator and Vic Fangio is going to turn this team around a lot. You got a ton of weapons on offense. I love their head coach, Mike McDaniel. Everything about him, from his press conferences to just everything about him. But Corey, can you tell me when these other teams visit Miami this year?
Yeah, so when it's hot, they're on the road. Miami's on the road. So the first time that they have a home division game is Halloween weekend against New England.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of takes away that. So
yeah. And Aaron Rodgers does notoriously bad in Florida, so him and the Jets going down there, and the Bills, I'm sure they usually play those late in the season as well for obvious reasons. I don't know who they pay off to get the schedule set up like that, but I think the Dolphins, according to this, it'd be a surprise because they have the second most amount of wins. But I think the Dolphins take this division this year, and as I said earlier, I worry about the Jets' offensive line protecting Aaron Rodgers. I believe they open with the Bills, so you got Von Miller and Leonard Floyd coming off the edge at a 37-year-old offensive tackle and a right tackle that's a bust. There's no other way to put it. And Rodgers, maybe we'll see him turn into Brady and Manning, and he'll just kind of lay down this year and doesn't want to take the hits. I mean, he's 39. He's not going to – I think the Jets are going to – I would bet the under on the Jets wins. Go ahead, Kyle, and then Corey, you can finish this up.
Sure. And for me, it's, being a Packers fan and watching the first game of the season is the Packers with Aaron Rodgers continue to get blowed out every year, the first game of the season for the last few years. And, the Bills will probably blow the Jets out week 1. And it really depends on what Aaron Rodgers the Jets are getting. Are they getting the pissed off Aaron Rodgers who's just trying to stick it to the world, or are they getting Aaron Rodgers of last year whose interception totals was, the highest it's been since 10 years ago, or, which one are they getting? The Dolphins, I'm with Tua, how long do they get to keep Tua for? The Bills will continue to be in the top of that division too. I think we're going to have a dogfight for the top 3, but you'll see me on here at some point during the season wearing my number 8 Aaron Rodgers Jets jersey. I've got the Jets, Jets winning this division.
Wow. So the Jets come in with a brand new team and take the division. I guess that's the goal. That was the goal in trading for Rodgers, huh?
Let's not forget that the past 3 years, we've had a quarterback win the Super Bowl who was on his first year with his new team. Matt Stafford with the Rams and Tom Brady with the Buccaneers. So, will we get that 3 out of the last 4 years? We'll see.
I have a tiebreaker for mine, and it was going to be the Dolphins until I just looked up their schedule. The first 4 games, 3 of them are away, so they don't even get to use that heat to do anything. I think it's going to be split by maybe 1 game, but I'm going to take the Bills. I think they have to start paying a lot of people next year. They're getting a little bit long in tooth in certain spots. To me, this has to be their year.
Yeah.
I think they only went, like I said, Dolphins are going to make the playoffs. I think the Jets will make the playoffs as well. But I think Bills edge out the Dolphins by a game to win the division.
What's your over under on the Patriots at 6.5?
Oh, I think they get the over.
Yeah.
It'll be 7, but I think this entire division hits the over.
Will the Patriots win a division game?
Yes.
How many?
Let's say 2. Let's say 2.
Okay.
And
I'm sure it'll be a big game when the Jets travel to Foxborough. Maybe that'll be a Sunday night or a Monday night game or something. They'll really push that.
We might be able to get Miami week 2 in Foxborough. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we went a little far over. We're at an hour and a half, guys. But I mean, you guys know I could sit here and talk ball all night, but we got to get to bed and get up in the morning. Next week, we will go over the South divisions, NFC and AFC. Hopefully, we can keep it a little bit shorter. The goal is to keep it under an hour, but we have yet to hit that. I think maybe week 1 we did. I'm not sure. But I mean, if you guys have anything else, we'll just close this thing out and see them next week.
I think it'll get tighter once we actually get into the season. We're explaining a lot of things right now, so we're fine.
Yeah,
It's all good. It's all good.
All right. See y'all next week.